there are like different strategies, and I know that different strategies work for different people. Some people learn from online resources, some people learn from reading blog posts, some people learn from books and etc. And some people just go and get a CS degree or boot camps maybe sometime. And so what do you think, how those things fit into the learning? So do you have any recommendation for choosing either one, or do you have some also recommendation for the foundations of them?
Yeah, so my story is kind of funny. I dropped out of computer science in college, so I do have experience in that realm to an extent. And then from there, I mostly self-taught. So all the things that I learned were mostly on the job, which I think is true for a lot of people. But then I also worked at a boot camp for 3 years, teaching people how to code through that. So I have experience with all these different methodologies. And my recommendation would be to teach yourself first. So use some online resources to get familiar with programming, thinking of it as something that you actually want to do, if it's something that you enjoy, that you think is something that you would be willing to spend the next X years of your career doing, because sinking your time and money into a boot camp or a computer science degree is going to be a lot more expensive than self-teaching. So self-teach for a little bit, make sure that you enjoy programming, maybe try to find some sort of sub-niche within programming too, like do you really like the back end or the front end or mobile development, because that will help you choose a boot camp or CS degree if you ultimately choose that path. So then from there, I would really assess if you are somebody who would be good at doing it yourself, because there's so much that goes into doing it yourself. It's, can you find the right resources? Are you going to stay on track and stay motivated? Are you going to be able to deal with the slightly more difficult task of getting your first job, because you're not going to have those resources behind you that you would have at a boot camp or a computer science degree. So there are huge benefits to teaching yourself if you can do that, but it's not going to be the most straightforward path. And I just try to think about the number of people who set out to teach themselves to code and the people that actually end up nailing their first job from that. And in the proportion is very small of the people that actually successfully do that. So that's something to keep in mind. But if you can self-teach and you think that that is the right path for you, the great piece of it is that on the job, you're going to be teaching yourself anyways. So you have a huge leg up in that category, and it's less money. You could probably keep your old job while you're teaching yourself as well. So there's less time expense to an extent as well. So there's that. So as far as boot camps go, like you have structure, you have a curriculum, you have somebody reading through your code to assess it and make sure that it's correct. That being said, it's a short amount of time, so you don't necessarily get the amount of depth that you may want with that boot camp. There are a lot of boot camps, and so it can be still pretty difficult to get your first job, but you do have like networking events usually built into that boot camp, and there are some real pros of that. So, and usually they are somewhat expensive as well. They're not as expensive as going back to a, usually, at least in the United States, and they're usually a shorter time period, so usually around 3 months or so. But there are pro bono boot camps. There are boot camps that are longer periods of time, so you just need to find one that fits what you want. That being said, I would do a lot of research into making sure that it's a good boot camp and that it's going to be a supportive environment, because I've seen so many horror stories on social media of people going to awful boot camps and things like that. So definitely filter it. And then computer science degrees, I think they're kind of the classic way to get into the field. Like if you think of how to become a software engineer, that's probably the first thing that people think of. It's really good from a reputation standpoint. People are usually going to trust that and see it on a resume and say, okay, that's somebody who has this experience. And so you definitely have a leg up for getting your first job. That being said, the amount of time to go back is a lot, and the amount of money that it costs is usually a lot as well. And so think about whether you want to transition in a matter of months or in multiple years. And if you have a couple years to dedicate to this instead of a couple months. So, and then the other thing with CS degrees is often they don't teach the actual things that you'll be using on the job.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more theoretical and like a step back from, or in abstraction from what you might actually use on a day-to-day basis at work. So there's still going to be a learning curve of self-teaching yourself those things once you get to work.
Yeah, I have a CS degree, and what I experienced from my CS degree is that I didn't learn anything that I can use directly. I mean, directly at work. Most of the things were like theoretical, and also they had the implication that I can use them indirectly, like saying like the knowledge, the algorithms, and also some other networking knowledge that I had gained in the university, and also like I don't know, programming languages and etc. But what I experienced also, like maybe saw on other people, my experience with online learning, especially like what I'm referring here as a self-taught process, is that the feedback cycle is the most problematic thing there. And that's why it's really hard, because you do something, you learn, but you don't get the feedback. Is it good? Like what you have learned, you try, is it good or not? Is it working?
Yeah. Is it actually like best practice? Did you follow some resource that's actually 10 years out of date that
Yeah, like
not the way that you actually want to do things? Like that's definitely the most difficult part of self-teaching.
Yeah.
But if you can do it successfully, then it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it takes a lot of personal time, and I would say energy. And the CS degree might not be expensive as in other parts of, as in US. For example, I didn't pay anything for my CS degree in Turkey. So it's just the government pays these things, but still the time investment is huge. Like I went there for 5 years, and I'm now thinking back, I might have been teaching myself for I don't know, for a year or so, and got the job. But it's
definitely. Even without the cost, even if you got like a full scholarship or it's paid for by the government, there's still the opportunity cost of working for 4 years or whatever.